welcome. Thank you for joining us for the City of Palo Alto's hosted virtual town hall session. It's a question and answer session regarding Meadow Drive and Charleston Road alternatives for the Caltrain grade separations. And we're really happy to have you join us this evening, and wanted to let you know that this YouTube video will be made available on the virtual town hall, which you can access by going to connectingpaloalto.com. And hopefully that you've joined us in one of our community meetings prior to the pandemic, or you've had a chance to be out on our virtual town hall looking at the various alternatives and the work that's being done around the Churchill area as well. If you have not had a chance to do that, our recommendation would be that you log out of this Q&A session, since it's not live. You could go make yourself familiar with the alternatives and then watch the tape. It would be very, very much more productive for you, and most of these answers will make more sense if you've had a chance to explore the virtual town hall and make yourself familiar with the different alternatives that are still being discussed. So, as I mentioned, this is a question and answer session. We have had the virtual town hall accepting comments and questions now for more than a week. And what we did last week at this time was to answer some general questions and questions about the Churchill area. And tonight we'll be answering general questions again, as well as focusing in on Meadow Drive and Charleston Road. And as I mentioned, that video is up on the website, and we have already had 124 views of our YouTube from last week, and we're hoping that tonight we get even more views. Not only participants watching us live, but also people who go back and see the videotape once it's up on YouTube. If you have not done so, there is a Connecting Palo Alto website in addition to the virtual town hall, and that website does have many library materials that you might find of interest as well. We will be showing you what the virtual town hall looks like this evening, and we will be going in and out of the materials that we have up available on the website. And you're going to hear many of our speakers ask Elliot Wong to help them show you where answers can be found to the questions that we will be answering this evening. And so Elliot works for the AECOM, which is the consultant team. As an engineer, he will be answering questions as well, but he'll be helping his colleagues at AECOM and also Hexagon, because we have our traffic engineer, Gary Black, with us this evening. They will all be introducing themselves as they answer questions. We do have two staff people from the City of Palo Alto, and they will be answering questions as well, and they'll be doing self-introductions as well. So today we want to share some general feedback, because we have been asking up on our virtual website for general feedback for people who have been accessing the information and giving us feedback on various alternatives. We'll be sharing the information that we've gathered so far with you, as well as doing a mini tutorial, and then we'll get into the question and answer session. If you did watch the Churchill Q&A, I would suggest that you could possibly fast forward through till question number 8, because questions 1 through 7 will be the same questions that we asked last time. They will be answered live this evening, but they are a duplicate question, and the same person will be answering them as did at the last one. So if you're familiar with that, you might want to skip ahead if you're watching this on the YouTube video. We will be having this virtual town hall and accepting feedback on the alternatives. Last week, we thought we would be closing the virtual town hall on Labor Day on September 7th, but this has been so well received, and there's been so many people participating. We're up to about 500 visits that we wanted to keep it open an extra week just to gather more input. So the virtual town hall will be live and answering input and accepting your feedback through September 14th, which is a Monday. It's the Monday after Labor Day. So wanted to make sure that you were aware of that, and I'll repeat that probably several times this evening as we go through these questions, and certainly again at the end of the video. So let's go ahead and move forward, and I'll share our agenda. And what we'll be doing is, as I mentioned, sharing some general feedback. Then we'll go through the Meadow Drive and Charleston Road alternatives in a mini tutorial. And then I'll give you some feedback on what the online surveys have been accepting as information so far and give you some flavor of which alternatives are getting what kind of reception. And then we'll move into general questions and answers, and then we'll move into the specific questions and the answers this evening related to Meadow and Charleston Road. We're thinking that the whole YouTube video will probably be about an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes. So just wanted to give you a time budget there. All right, next. So just to give you some general feedback on who's been accessing our site so far. And this has been gathered as of, I believe it was last night, not the 3rd, at 11 p.m. So that would be 9/2, not 9/3. Today is the 3rd. So we can see very much that Southgate neighborhood is by far the one that's recorded the most visits so far of people who chose to answer this question, followed by Old Palo Alto, the University South, other, and Charleston Meadow neighborhood. So those of you who are here to see that, you're represented. And then it looks like Duveneck, St. Francis is also represented. So we'll be keeping these kinds of things live as well. As you can see, email is by far the most recorded way that people heard about this virtual town hall. And those of you who were able to attend any of our live meetings did give us your emails. So that was blasted out by the city, as well as I know some of the neighborhood associations have sent emails, and a lot of business groups, et cetera. You can also see that we did receive some newspaper coverage, and that is another way that people identified that they heard about the virtual town hall. And of course, word of mouth and people who watch the community advisory panel meetings, where this set of question and answer sessions was highlighted, as well as the existence of the virtual town hall. So that was popular as well. Next. So people who have joined us on the virtual town hall, we asked them whether they're finding the information and the very interactive nature of the website to be useful, whether they think it's a good site, very good, et cetera. And as you can see here, good or very good is a very much a lot of the feedback that we've gotten so far, along with fair, while very poor or poor is much less, 10%. So we're feeling very comfortable about the fact that people are able to navigate, and there is a tutorial on the website. If you have not had a chance to be interacting with it, I would suggest that you start there first. And that'll help you jump around, and you'll be able to also see how Elliot does that this evening in the various answers to questions that we'll get to in just a little bit. Okay, as you can see, the town hall feedback and comments. This was started on the 18th of August, and it was modified as of yesterday, and we had 83 responses. This is the kinds of questions and places where we harvested the questions we'll be asking at the end of this YouTube. And 83 people have chosen to give us feedback through that mechanism. And then when you're in the alternatives, and you'll see this in just a minute, we also ask for feedback right after you've seen the materials related to one or more of the options. And as you can see, 163 responses have come in directly giving us feedback on various alternatives. So one of the questions we asked at our community meetings prior to the pandemic, and we've continued to ask this online, is whether or not enough analysis has been done to decide amongst the various grade separation alternatives. There's quite a lot of different variations, and the city is anxious to narrow down to a manageable number to keep moving forward on this process. And when we were here last week, I would say that the yes/no was a much closer response. And now, as you can see, the yeses are pulling away from the no's on the answer to this question. And then we've also asked, we did this as well during our live sessions, and we've continued it here on our website, and wanted to report out that what do people think the most important factors are in evaluating the alternatives? And we asked people to pick 3. And so this is an aggregate of where people are clicking. And as you can see, the flow of traffic, whether that's traffic, pedestrians, or bicycles, very, very important to the Palo Alto community, as well as cost. And that's that red line second from the bottom. And so that's very similar to the trend lines that we had a week ago. So these seem like very consistent feedback on these priorities from the community. And then now I'm going to turn it over to Elliot, who will walk you through the alternatives to set the base for our conversation today and show you how to move around the website. Elliot?
Hi, everyone. So let's just jump straight into the Palo Alto Virtual Town Hall. As we enter the room, what we want to focus on is the right-hand side of the table, near the, at this button right here. We click on this, single click, to get access to all of the Meadow-Charleston alternative options that is currently being considered. We've got the trench, we've got the viaduct, the hybrid, the South Palo Alto tunnel with both passenger and freight inside the tunnel. Then we've got the South Palo Alto tunnel with only the passenger in the tunnel and the freight remaining at grade. And lastly, we have the underpass. So let's take a look at one of these. Let's just call the hybrid. Single click to enter into this new overlay. Within the overlay, there is a top screen and there is the overlay of the model. All of the materials that we typically have on our community meetings, such as exhibits, are all located up top. So we've got the planning sections, single click to access these. We've got the animation, we've got the renderings, as well as the fact sheets. On the model table overlay, all of these blue dots show a 360-degree angle of the alternative. These alternative renderings are developed from our engineering drawings, so they are dimensionally accurate. And to scroll and to pan around the image here, single left click, and then you drag. This will allow you to kind of look around and get a feel for the alternative in its surroundings, in its location. To exit out of this, click this blue cross or anywhere on the shaded area. And then to return back to the alternative selection screen, click this blinking button. At which point the feedback form will come up and you can naturally fill in the feedback pertaining to each relevant alternative.
Great, thank you, Elliot. So tonight we wanted to give you an understanding of what we've heard so far about the various alternatives that you'll be listening to some of the questions related to in just a little bit. But what's happening so far from the feedback is you can see here that the trench is not seen as a good alternative. In fact, very few people feel that it's either okay or good, and many more feel that this is not a good alternative to keep moving forward. And then next, we asked the same type of question, good, bad, or okay / neutral, about the hybrid. And this one you can see has more good, but also a few more people who are neutral or don't feel this is worthy of moving forward. And then this is the viaduct. This would be where Caltrain would be elevated and the streets would stay at their current grade. Again, both good and bad here. A lot more energy around this one. You can see more people have had their feedback added in. And next, the underpass. This one has a lot of people saying bad, although some people do like it. And again, very few people have no or okay neutral feelings about this one. And then the South Tunnel. This is where both the passenger and the freight trains would be in a tunnel. This one is also trending on the bad side with, again, fewer people with good or neutral. And then the next one is at grade freight. And we don't have anyone who thinks this one is good or even anyone who's neutral about it. And what this alternative is the alternative where the passenger train or Caltrain would be in the tunnel, but the freight trains would continue at grade the way they do today. So this one has definitely trending on the bad side. So as you can see here, when we add all this together, we're showing that the hybrid is coming out slightly ahead, the underpass is up there, the trench is still in play, and definitely the tunnels are much less so. Okay, and now we'll start into those general questions. And the first one will go to Phil from the city. And why isn't leaving the at-grade crossing as it is being considered? Phil, if you could take that and introduce yourself to the group.
Thanks, Eileen. I'm Philip Cami, Chief Transportation Official, and thanks for joining us in our second Q&A session. So the connecting Palo Alto fact sheet that can be found both on the virtual town hall and on connectingpaloalto.com provides information regarding this. And I'm hoping Elliot maybe can help us to show where we'd find the fact sheets in the virtual town hall. So Caltrain is currently in the process of electrifying their trains as part of their effort to increase both frequency and capacity. And this will increase the trains, which will lead to an increase in gate downtime and will cause more delays to all modes of transportation. And under electrification, the gates will actually be down for approximately 15% of peak hour times. And due to this, the traffic backup would become excessive. So in addition to this, leaving the at-grade crossing as is, which would be considered no build, would be evaluated as part of the environmental process for any alternative.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Our next question is, since Caltrain ridership has decreased significantly due to the pandemic, should we be delaying making a decision until ridership increases, Phil?
Thanks, Eileen. City staff believes that the transit decrease that's associated with the pandemic and also the economic downturn, while currently significant, is only temporary. And Caltrain and high-speed rail are continuing to move forward. So these are long-term plans, and the grade separations realistically will take quite a while to build.
Okay, thank you. All right, question number 3. Is Caltrain's corridor-wide grade separation study needed for the city to make a decision? In other words, does that study need to be complete before the city can move forward, Phil?
The Caltrain corridor-wide grade separation study will look at the entire 3-county Caltrain region for grade separation coordination. And this effort will supplement the city efforts by providing additional information that we can build upon our selected alternatives. But these are really independent efforts.
Okay, thank you. Okay, number 4, how have the economic social consequences from the pandemic impacted the city council's decision-making process with regard to the rail crossing agenda? Phil?
Thanks. Projects such as grade crossings are multi-year long-term projects, as I mentioned earlier. And typically the impacts of economic related effects will be diminished within 2 to 5 years, which is significantly shorter than the planning and construction horizon for this type of project. So we're cautiously proceeding with these alternatives while monitoring other regional transportation plans and efforts. It's also worth noting that during the last economic downturn, the federal government made funding available for infrastructure projects under the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, ARA. And if something similar occurs following this or in this economic situation, Palo Alto needs to be in a position to apply for this funding for grade separations.
Great, thank you. All right, when will a decision be made, Phil?
So we have a community advisory panel, the XCAP, which has been tasked by council to recommend a preferred alternative or preferred alternatives for the crossings. And the XCAP is currently deliberating these alternatives and they're narrowing down their selections. In addition, the feedback from this town hall will be considered by council. And the XCAP is planning to take their final report and a recommendation to council this fall. And we're hoping to have a recommended selected alternative by the end of this year.
Great. So that really underlines the need for people to get their feedback through our virtual town hall through September 14th. Okay, question number 6. Who will pay to design and construct the grade separation alternative selected? Phil, could you answer that one as well?
Elliot, can you show where the funding and financial page is in the virtual town hall? This has a little more information, but I'll just give a little overview. Typically, projects such as these require a combination of funding sources to fund construction. Voters have approved the countywide sales tax Measure B, of which it's estimated at approximately $700 million that will be available for Santa Clara County grade crossings. There are 8 total grade crossings and 4 of them are in Palo Alto. The city also will explore federal funds, state, regional funds, and other similar type of funding that are available potentially for this type of project. And I just have to note that applying for federal, state, and regional grants will not be able to begin until after a project's defined.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Our next question is, where are the cost and construction timelines for the various alternatives? Let's give Philip a break and have Millette answer this one. Millette? And if you'd
Hi,
introduce.
yes, this is Millette Litzinger, and I'm a senior project manager at AECOM. And for this information can be found on regarding the construction timelines and the cost in our evaluation matrix. And I'm going to ask Elliot to pull that up on our website. So the construction timelines are summarized in row J of the evaluation matrix, and the order of magnitude cost are summarized just below that row. And this information is also included in the fact sheets for each of the alternatives. For Meadow and Charleston alternatives, the construction timelines for the viaduct is the shortest at 2 years. And the hybrid and underpass are approximately 4 years. The trench and the tunnel alternatives are the longest at 6 years. As in regards to cost, the hybrid is the least costly to construct at 190 million to 230 million. Then the next is the underpass cost, which cost 340 million to 420 million. And that's followed by the viaduct at 400 million to 500 million. And then the trench at 800 million to 950 million. Both of the tunnel alternatives are the most costly, and they're coming in at around 1.2 billion to 1.8 billion.
Okay, thank you. All right, question number 8. Will the public be able to view the comments submitted by the community through the virtual town hall? Ripon, could you take that question and introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Thank you, Eileen. And good afternoon, everyone. Ripon Bhatia, Senior Engineer with City of Palo Alto. So the comments and the questions we are receiving through virtual town hall are answered in the question and answer sessions, such as one we are conducting right now. And also these frequently asked questions will be added to the Connecting Palo Alto website. Virtual Town Hall also provides for the link that takes you to the Connecting Palo Alto site where these frequently asked questions are located. All comments received through Virtual Town Hall will eventually be tabulated and included in the meeting summary after the Virtual Town Hall wraps up. As you heard earlier in this session, Eileen also provided the stats, which summarizes the community's feedback received to date on the Virtual Town Hall website. These are some of the avenues through which community can view comments that we have received on the Virtual Town Hall.
Okay, thanks, Ripon. All right, question number 9. Shouldn't a long-term tunneling alternative for the entire Caltrain corridor be considered? Ripon, could you answer that as well?
Sure. Yeah, the citywide tunnel alternative was reviewed and discussed earlier in the process. After reviewing the cost and complexities of the citywide tunnel alternative, City Council eliminated that option from further consideration. And also the Caltrains will soon be initiating a corridor-wide study that we are not anticipating the Caltrain considering this corridor-wide tunnel in that study. Caltrain is encouraging communities to go for grade separation alternatives, primarily due to the cost of the construction of such tunnel process. So we don't believe tunneling alternative for the entire corridor is being considered at this time.
Okay, thank you. Question 10, is it possible to zoom into plans using a display widget? And can the profile and typical sections be downloaded? This sounds like the perfect question for Elliot. Elliot?
Right. So to get into the, let's get into one of the exhibits first. Let's take the viaduct, for example. When we are in the exhibits or the planning section, to zoom in, feel free to scroll in and out with your mouse wheel. This will allow you to take, I guess, a better look and more in-depth look at the exhibits that we have. If you're on a mobile device, use 2 fingers, touch the screen, spread out to drag out to zoom in, and then pinch in together to zoom out. If you're wanting to download one of these exhibits, feel free to go into the Connecting Palo Alto website. At the rendering and animations link, all of the All of the exhibits, animations, renderings, everything can be downloaded within that web page. Slight technical difficulties, apologize. Let's do a quick refresh of the page. Okay, it doesn't seem to be loading for me. Oh, there we go. So all of the alternatives for Churchill and Meadow-Charleston are listed as a link within this page. And to get access to one of these, single click. Well, let's just take the Churchill closure, for example. And when it loads, there will be a button on the top right with the shape of an arrow down on the platform. Click onto this, and you can download it and save it onto your local drive.
Terrific, thank you. All right, question 11. Would construction at Churchill Avenue occur at the same time as the construction on Meadow Drive and Charleston Road? Ripon, could you answer that for us, please?
Sure. It's highly unlikely that city will pursue the construction of Churchill Avenue at the same time as the grade separation on Meadow and Charleston Road. These are long-term projects and require significant efforts for the design and construction planning, and so we will plan it accordingly. Furthermore, the funding constraints will also limit the city's ability to fund and construct these improvements simultaneously. Also, if Meadow and Charleston were to be done together as one project, we'll make sure that at least one of the crossing remains open so that the traffic can go through at least one of those crossings.
Okay, thank you. Question 12. What are the private property impacts for the Meadow-Charleston alternatives? Peter, could you answer that question and introduce yourself, please?
Sure, thanks, Eileen. My name is Peter DiStefano. I'm a civil engineer with AECOM. So for all the alternatives, there are no property acquisitions except for the Meadow and Charleston Underpass. So Elliot, if you could, let's go to the fact sheet for the Meadow-Charleston Underpass, and let's take a look at the exhibit that shows the property acquisitions. There we go. On this page here, we see some shaded blue and green on here. The blue is full property acquisitions and the greens are partials. On the left is the Meadow Underpass. So due to the realignment of Meadow Drive to the north, there'll be a property acquisition on the northeast corner of Alma and Meadow and on the northeast corner of Park and Meadow. In addition, to accommodate the project geometrics, there'll be some narrow partial acquisitions that are shown here in green that front Meadow on each side of the street. And well, on the south side of the street, east of the tracks, and on the west of the tracks on both sides of the street, as you can see there in the shaded colors. And for Charleston, similarly, we'll have some full property acquisitions and some partials. The shaded area up there near Mumford is to accommodate the roundabout. And on the west side of the tracks near Park Boulevard is to accommodate the ped bike path on that side of the street. And again, similarly, we'll have some narrow partial acquisitions on both sides of Charleston and also along Alma from Charleston down to Eli Place.
Thank you. All right. Number 13, what are the long-term maintenance costs of the Meadow-Charleston alternatives? Millette, could you answer that, please?
Yes, we have not developed costs for the long-term maintenance items, but we have identified the anticipated items. And I'm going to ask Elliot to go to the evaluation matrix that we were looking at previously. And this information can be found in row M of the evaluation matrix. Items include pump stations for dewatering for all of the alternatives except the viaduct. There's also mention of lift stations and siphons for the creek diversions, for the tunnel and the trench alternatives. And I wanted to note that Caltrain has provided some clarity on who would be responsible for maintenance costs related to the railroad. And Caltrain has said that Caltrain will take on maintenance responsibility for new infrastructure that will raise or lower the tracks by embankment, viaduct, or bridge. However, the city would assume the city should assume that it would be responsible for the cost to maintain a trench or a tunnel alternative. And if you wanted to explore more of the text in this answer to this question, Elliot's showing you where our Caltrain notices are, and that far one on the right that's labeled Caltrain email grade. It has a list of questions, and this is one of them where they answered about what the maintenance responsibilities would be in the future.
Okay, thank you. All right, question number 14. For the Meadow-Charleston Underpass, could a box jacking system method of construction be used to eliminate the shoofly? Peter?
Sure, yeah. Well, this question came up from someone from the XCAP community, committee rather. This is a great question. First, let me describe what a box jacking system is. So Elliot, if you could go to the YouTube video, just put it on pause at that point in the video there, that's perfect. So basically, this is a system that avoids the need for a shoofly track to construct the bridge. So what they do is they excavate on each side of the tracks, approaching, like, for example, in this video, let's say this is Meadow Drive, where they excavate down, approaching the tracks, they leave the tracks in place, they keep it in service for as long as possible. And then once they're ready to get this bridge in place, they'll shut the rail down for a weekend, let's say a Friday night, and they'll remove the tracks, they'll excavate down, and then they'll slide this, that you see in the foreground here in this picture, this U-shaped structure with the plate girder there on top, and they'll just slide it into place with these hydraulic jacks. So Elliot, go ahead and roll the video of this. This is a time lapse. This video is going to hop back and forth. It's a little confusing from each side, but you can see there with the backhoes there, they're excavating the area where the existing tracks are to get the dirt out of the way. And then once the excavation is done, yeah, you can see it sliding now with the hydraulic, those blue hydraulic jacks on the bottom, and they just slide it right into place. So this is a very intriguing idea. And yeah, you could stop the video now, Elliot, or you could just keep it running, that's fine. But this is an intriguing idea that it was brought up again for the benefit of, hey, can we do this? They did this on the Long Island Railroad project in New York. Can we do this on our project to avoid the need for a shoofly? And there's really some more engineering that needs to get done before we could say yes or no to this question. For one of the biggest challenges is structurally. By having this U-shaped substructure slide into place, it's on a spread footing. Typically in seismic country here in California, these bridges are on pile foundations to resist those lateral and vertical loads in an earthquake. So that's one thing of several that would have to be looked at more carefully. And then if we do deem it to be feasible, then we would approach Caltrain with this idea and see if it could be done. So yes, it's possible, but whether it could be done for sure, we just don't know yet at this point.
So Peter, just while you have the floor, I think it would be helpful for our audience to understand what the benefit would be of not having a shoofly and what a shoofly actually is for the layperson.
Right, sure, yeah. The shoofly tracks are these temporary detour. It's a temporary detour essentially for the railroad, and it, aside from the extra cost to do that, you'd have removal of trees in the corridor. You'd have impacts to Alma Street because the shoofly would have to be typically. You could see those actually in the animations on the town hall site. We show the animations for construction, but there's impacts to Alma during construction. This would also have an impact to Alma during construction as well, but maybe in a different way. So yeah, there would potentially be a lot of benefits to not having to construct a shoofly.
Okay, thank you. Question number 15, is the Meadow-Charleston Underpass the only alternative that allows through traffic on Charleston and Meadow to cross both the tracks and Alma without stopping, Peter?
So yeah, on Charleston, the answer to this is yes. From from Ruth Elma to Mumford, there would be continuous movement for the through movement on Charleston. There would be no traffic lights. However, on Meadow, it's not quite that straightforward. There would be a signalized intersection at the bottom of the sag curve on the underpass where the southbound ramp from Alma Street would connect with Meadow. There'd be a T intersection there with the signalized intersection.
Okay, thank you. All right. For the Meadow-Charleston Underpass, could the ramp from the southbound Alma Street to Charleston Road be deleted? Gary, would you take that and also introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello. Gary Black with Hexagon Transportation Consultants, and we are the traffic engineers on the project on the AECOM team. And so if Elliot could show the plan view of the of Charleston at Alma, we can take a look at the ramp that's being asked about. And that ramp is what would carry the traffic that goes eastbound on Charleston and wants to make a right turn to go southbound on Alma. And that ramp is very busy, or that right turn is very busy. And in fact, our forecasts for 2030 show that there would be over 500 cars in the peak hour that would want to make that right turn. And so if that ramp were not available, those cars would have to travel up to the roundabout and then turn around and come back and then go through the signal to make a left turn to go south on Alma. Because of the volume, it wouldn't work to have that many cars make that maneuver. So in order to maintain operations for this alternative, it's necessary that ramp be part of the design.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next question is for the Meadow-Charleston Underpass, what turning movements are allowed? Gary?
Okay, well, there are two intersections that are part of the underpass plan. One is at Alma Meadow and the other is at Alma Charleston. And if Elliot could show there are fact sheets available in the virtual town hall that show the turning movements that are allowed. And we're seeing those on the screen now. A regular four-way intersection like those intersections exist today, there are 12 possible turning movements. That's a right through left in each direction. And at Charleston, with this underpass alternative, it would be possible to make all 12 of those movements. Even though this diagram doesn't show all 12 of them, some of the movements would be made by going through the roundabout. For example, if traffic was heading north on Alma and wanted to make a left turn to go west on Charleston, that traffic would make a right turn, travel down Charleston to the roundabout, and then go through the roundabout and come back underneath the tracks and underneath Alma on Charleston. And similarly, there's other turn movements that could be accomplished by going through the roundabout. So all 12 movements would be possible. At the Meadow Underpass, this is not the case. Not all 12 movements would be possible here. There would be 2 movements that would not be possible. And that is for traffic going either direction on Meadow to go south on Alma. Whether they were going eastbound or westbound, they wouldn't be able to make that movement. I should point out that a couple of the movements here would require traffic to travel up to the signal at Alma Plaza in order to make a U-turn. So that would be the traffic that's northbound on Alma that wanted to go either direction on Meadow, would make a U-turn at that signal, come back and use the ramp connection to Meadow. So there would be 2 movements that wouldn't be accommodated here.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next question is for the Meadow-Charleston Underpass. Since some turning movements are not allowed, is there an opportunity for cut-through traffic on the neighborhood streets? Gary, I think this one's yours as well.
Yes, there would be the demand for traffic to cut through on some neighborhood streets because of those 2 movements that we were talking about that wouldn't be allowed. And maybe Elliot could show us the plan view of Charleston. We can point out sort of how this would happen. So for example, traffic that was headed eastbound on Meadow and wanted to make a right turn to go south on Alma, that traffic that movement would not be allowed, so that traffic would need to find some other way to get down to Charleston in order to make a right turn. There are 3 parallel streets there now. There's El Camino Real, there's Wilkie Way, and there's Park Boulevard. And however, with this underpass alternative, Park Boulevard would be modified at Charleston, so it wouldn't be possible to make a left turn. So that means that Park could not be used. So that leaves Wilkie Way and El Camino as the way to make that connection. Then on the other side, on the east side, in order to, if you're heading westbound on East Meadow and you want to go south on Alma, you have to make your way down to Charleston in order to do that. And so there would be a demand for traffic to cut through the Fair Meadow neighborhood on some of the neighborhood streets in order to get from East Meadow down to Charleston. And to put some numbers to it, during the peak hours, there are about 80 cars per hour that want to make these turns to go south on Alma. So that would be the potential volume that would cut through these neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, for question number 19, for the Meadow-Charleston Underpass, will motor traffic increase on Wilkie Way? Gary?
Yes, as we were just talking about, Wilkie Way provides a direct connection from East Meadow to Charleston. So that would be one of the routes that traffic could use to get from East Meadow to Charleston with the underpass alternative in order to go south on Alma. And as I said before, the volume of traffic in the peak hour that is making that right turn now is about 80 vehicles. So that could be, all or some of those could take Wilkie Way.
Okay, thank you. Question 20. For the Meadow-Charleston Underpass, was there any additional traffic analysis performed to ensure that streets can handle the cut-through traffic due to additional movements around the roundabout or Alma? Gary?
Yes. The traffic study includes extensive analysis of the operations of the underpass alternative. If Elliot goes to the virtual town hall, he can point to where you can find the traffic study. So you can go there to that location and you can read all about it. The shortcut answer is yes, the streets and intersections and roundabout can accommodate the traffic for the underpass alternative.
Okay, thank you. All right, question number 21. For the Meadow-Charleston Underpass, can the sharp corners of the cyclists have to navigate be modified? Peter, can you take that one?
Sure. Yeah, so on these 2 alternatives, there are some 90-degree and even there's a 180-degree turn for the bike path. Elliot, if you go to the next slide and hit play. This is a 90-degree turn at the Homer Underpass here in Palo Alto. As you can see, this bicyclist is taking this turn, very slowly. So I think the short answer to this question is there is room for some refinement of the designs, but I don't want anyone to have an expectation that we're going to have these long sweeping curves due to the right-of-way constraints that we do have on this project. So a situation like this would be the ones that we'd have on our project as well. I also have a sample of the Stevens Creek Trail in Mountain View. Here's a 180-degree turn. And Elliot, if you could click on the next slide, we could show just the animation of how slowly people have to really make this turn. They have to be careful making this turn because it's pretty tight. As you can see the sign there on the left, it says 5 miles an hour. So we're looking at very low speeds for bicyclists around these sharp turns.
Thanks, Peter. All right, our next question. For the Meadow-Charleston Underpass, are the plan and section drawings missing some dimensions on vertical clearance? And is an 8-foot vertical clearance adequate? Peter?
Sure, yeah, let me take the first question here first. This is, there were some dimensions that were missing. We've since added them to the exhibits and they're now posted to the website. Now, is an 8-foot vertical clearance adequate? Let me just read a quick blurb from the Caltrain's HDM. The vertical clearance across the width of a bike path shall be a minimum of 8 feet, where practical, a vertical clearance of 10 feet is desirable. So especially during planning design, like we are in the planning stage where we are now, we aim for 10 feet. In the case, for this one case here on Meadow though, we're under some pretty tight constraints. On the left here, where you see the descent of the ramp near Station 200, that's just east of Park Boulevard. And we can't make our descent east of that area because we need to maintain driveway access to some private properties. In other words, we can't have the street on one elevation and the sidewalk much lower than that. So we need to keep those at the same so people could access their driveways. The second constraint is the railroad bridge. So the rail elevation itself is fixed, and then this, based on a certain structure depth, we get about 8 feet of vertical clearance. That said, again, some refinements during final design could be made where, let's say, we reduce the structure depth where we could increase the vertical clearance there slightly. So you can see those other dimensions. You know, we aim for 10 feet minimum, and I believe 8 feet is the only case where we have less than 10 feet on the ped bike paths for either Meadow or Charleston. So this is a little bit of an unusual case, but 8 feet is adequate. Again, we try to shoot for more when we can.
Okay, thank you, Peter. All right, our next question is for the Meadow-Charleston Underpass, where do pedestrians and bicyclists walk and ride, and where do they connect to the existing bike ped facilities? Peter, can you explain that to the group?
Yeah, so Elliot, if we could take first the next slide, we got an image here of Meadow. Before you hit click, don't hit it, let's get everyone oriented here. I'm gonna show the path of travel heading west. So I'm gonna start at the top of the page. You're gonna see a black dotted line, and that's going to be the path of travel for the bicyclists. So we'll be heading west on Meadow. Go ahead and click play there, Elliot. So as we head down towards, hit rewind on that. Yeah, just do a single click. It should animate. There we go. We head towards the crosswalk near Emerson. We cross the street, get onto the ped bike path that goes underneath Alma, underneath the tracks, underneath the ped bike bridge, and then eventually comes to 2nd Street where there's another crosswalk. So the bicyclists could use the crosswalk to get to the other side of the street and connect with the Class 2 bike path on Meadow. And then similarly, we have let's take a look at Charleston. I'm gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna start on the bottom of the page and work our way east. Again, we're connecting to a Class 2, we're coming from a Class 2 bike path near Ruth Elma, which is just off the screen on the bottom. So Elliot, if you could do a single click, we could start that animation. We'll run parallel to Charleston, cross a bridge over Charleston, come back in the other direction to the west, do a 180, and then start the descent under the tracks, underneath Alma, start the ascent back up towards Right Place, cross Charleston, go through the roundabout, and then connect back to the Class 2 bike facility near Mumford Place.
Thank you, Peter. All right, our next question is for the Meadow-Charleston Underpass. Will there be a signalized or controlled crossing on Meadow at Emerson and 2nd Street to allow for pedestrians and bikes to cross? Ripon, could you take that one, please?
Sure. Yeah, a city will consider additional improvements in the subsequent phases of the project to determine appropriate traffic control devices for such intersections within the project. The devices could be anything like signing, striping, ped bike, pedestrian crossing signals. And these design development phase, design development phase will include the evaluation and the detailed design of such traffic control devices. We'll make sure that these devices are designed to meet the California MUTCD, or Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices requirements, and that the pedestrians and bicycles can safely maneuver at these locations. These improvements will eventually become part of the construction of the project.
Okay, thank you. Question number 25. Is it possible to select the hybrid alternative for Meadow crossing and the underpass for Charleston? Ripon, could you explain that?
Sure. Yeah, this question also came in the XCAP meeting. So we had done some preliminary analysis, which indicates that the roadway improvements can accommodate for the two alternatives independently at either Meadow or Charleston location. However, there would be some additional design and improvements that we would need to perform in order to accommodate these two independent solutions. The hybrid alternative raises the track by 14 feet at Meadow, and the distance required to transition railroad grade from 14 feet to match existing grade that meets the Caltrain's requirement is greater than the distance between the two crossings. As a result, the railroad tracks may need to be elevated at both crossing locations. The project will require longer shoofly than the anticipated for the current underpass alternatives at Meadow and Charleston, because the underpass alternative does not include any raising rail at either of those locations. And so the grade separation at these locations will therefore require additional design to work to elevate the railroad at one or maybe both locations and to accommodate such improvements. But it is feasible and it could be done.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is, why was a tunnel with freight still at grade considered? Millette, could you answer that question, please?
Yes, the premise for adding the tunnel with at-grade freight alternative was based on public feedback that there would be a cost savings if the tunnel did not have to be designed to accommodate freight. While there was some cost savings related to the smaller tunnel diameter, it wasn't a significant difference. Other design changes, such as reducing the grade and the vertical clearance within the tunnel, were explored. But ultimately, Caltrain indicated that changes to the design criteria could not be assumed. So specifically, Caltrain, and I'll read a quote from a letter that is in that same location that Elliot had showed you previously, where the Caltrain notices are. But what it said, what Caltrain responded, the response was, any changes to Caltrain standards must be considered in a way that is careful, deliberate, and fully and fairly weighs both the benefits and consequences, and should be undertaken on a system-wide basis.
Okay, thank you. Will the tunnel alternatives reduce the number of lanes on Alma Street? Elliot, could you answer that question, please?
Yes, so we covered this within the animations, and we have it in detail for both the North Portal and South Portal at both tunnel alternatives. So feel free to have a look at that at your own in your own time. But in summary, for the alternative with the passenger and freight trains inside the tunnel, on the North Portal, Alma Street will be reduced down to one lane in each direction, and at the South Portal, only the northbound Alma Street lane will be remaining. The southbound will be occupied by the shoofly. This situation will be during the construction phase, and once construction is finished, the shoofly tracks are removed and Alma Street is restored as is. In the alternative with the freight on the surface and the passenger train inside the tunnel itself, due to the smaller diameter, we can shrink the shoofly a little bit and the tunnel box width a little bit as well. So this would allow an open one lane on each direction for both North and South Portal. But because the freight alignment will remain as is, so after the construction, the shoofly tracks remains there to serve the freight. So Alma Street is permanently altered to one lane in each direction.
Okay, thank you. Question number 28. For the Meadow-Charleston viaduct, what is the distance from the viaduct structure to the houses? Peter, could you help us with this question, please?
Sure. Yeah, in the existing condition, the tracks are a little bit closer to the homes that are along Park Boulevard. So they're closer to the homes on the east side. I'm sorry, on the west side. So with the permanent shift of the track alignment for the viaduct to the east, it puts the tracks roughly equidistant between the homes on Park Boulevard and the homes on the other side of Alma that are along Roosevelt Circle, Meadow Drive, and Stark King Circle. And that distance is approximately 70 to 75 feet. So it'd be 70, 75 feet to the homes on each side of the tracks.
Okay, thank you. And here's our second to last question. For the Meadow-Charleston viaduct, are bike lanes shown on Meadow Drive and Charleston Road, Peter?
Yeah, so really the goal for the viaduct was, for the roads anyway, is to mimic the existing conditions. And there are class 2 bike lanes on Meadow and Charleston. So the goal would be to maintain those through the Alma Street intersection. That said, in the next phase of the project, we'll be coordinating with the city of Palo Alto about their long-term bike plans and ensure that any striping and widening of the street would accommodate those plans.
Okay, thank you. And then our final question is, will the elevated railroad alignment alternatives, such as the viaduct and the hybrid, result in more noise? Millette, could you explain the answer to this one? Millette, you might be muted.
There we go. Sorry about that. Yes, the viaduct and hybrid alternatives would raise the elevation of the rail line above the current ground elevation by about 15 or 20 feet in some areas. And this could slightly decrease the noise reduction provided by the first row of houses or first row of buildings for the subsequent rows. So that means that the sound could radiate out past the first row of buildings. However, this could more than be compensated by the reduction in wheel noise that will be provided by a 6-foot noise barrier mounted on the elevated structure near the train. The hybrid alternative could also help reduce Alma Street noise, road noise that is, for the homes to the west of the rail line by providing a physical barrier between the roadway and the homes. Elliot has shown you where some of the documents are on the website, but we do have our full noise and vibration study that is there and available. And it provides a comparison of the proposed alternatives in terms of potential noise and vibration benefits and impacts. But the biggest reduction in existing noise would come from eliminating horn soundings in the vicinity of the grade crossings. Train operators are required to sound the horn at grade crossings per the Federal Rail Administration's regulations. So with the construction of grade separations and or closures, this requirement would be eliminated for all of the alternatives to a significant benefit. Yeah, this results in substantial noise reductions in areas near the existing grade crossings. Aside from the elimination of the horn noise, the alternatives differed by smaller amounts when considering secondary noise benefits between the alternatives, such as the change in the elevation grades, change in elevation of the railroad, as well as the roadway geometrics.
Thank you. Well, that's the last formal question we have here for this session, but please keep sending us your feedback. As I mentioned at the opening of this question and answer session, we will be extending the opportunity to accept comments and the virtual town hall for an extra week, and we'll be closing it on the evening of Monday, the 14th of September, which is a week after our original deadline of Labor Day. So it's the next Monday after Labor Day. And we really appreciate those of you who have sent us questions. What we'll be doing between now and then is having the team look at some additional questions. And if there are some themes evolving, like the ones we heard tonight about traffic or noise or any of these other topics, we'll be refreshing our frequently asked questions document along the way. And so we really do appreciate you sending both your feedback on the alternatives, both in the Charleston Meadow area as well as Churchill. And so all of that will be open and available to take feedback through the 14th of September. And we want to thank you. And for those of you who joined us mid-session, when we adjourn here in just a minute, the whole session starting from the beginning will be uploaded onto YouTube, and the link will be in our virtual town hall, so you can go back to the beginning of the session and maybe catch up for any of the questions you might have missed along the way. So please spread the word about our virtual town hall, about the feedback opportunities, and about our 2 question and answer sessions, the one tonight and the one we did last week, focusing on the Churchill neighborhood. So that's it. And on behalf of the team and the city of Palo Alto, we thank you for your participation, and we look forward to hearing